Welcome back to another episode of Cast and Reel Wisconsin. Today we're going to be doing a little bit different of an episode. We're not going to be on the water fishing today, but instead I'm going to be showing you guys how I set up my copper reels for salmon fishing on Lake Michigan. It's a little bit of a unique setup compared to some people that I see, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys, get this video underway. Alright, so I'm going to I got everything laid out here as what you will need to run a copper setup on Lake Michigan. There's quite a few materials, so I'm going to quickly run through a list of them here and exactly what they're for. So let's turn this around here. First of all, what you're going to want is you're going to want to research. If you look up "For the Love of Copper" on Google, you will find a very good article about reel size per copper length. But today we're going for an Okuma 30 size convector. This is capable of holding up to about 120 feet of copper. I have a 120 copper already spooled. Today we're going to be spooling, if there's at least 100 feet of copper on here, that's what we're going to be spooling. If not, we'll go a little bit less. But yeah, 30 size convector here. And then for rods for copper, this is actually not the type of rod that you're going to want to be looking for. This right here is just a standard Okuma downrigger rod. It has a plastic guide inserts. But we're just going to be using this rod for the time being to spool this up. But for copper, I do recommend a rod system that does have all stainless guides. This does not. Alrighty, next thing that we're going to run through on our list here, why I am out in the middle of my driveway here, is to spool my copper correctly and to get the correct lengths of leaders, back spool and everything like that. I actually use a rangefinder. So you got just a little Vortex rangefinder here, and I use this tied to the truck, and I pull out however many feet of line I want. So let's say I want to spool exactly 100 feet of copper. I'm gonna tie one end of the copper to the front of the truck, walk out 100 feet until the rangefinder says I'm there, and I'm at exactly at 100 feet. It's the most accurate way to make sure you get exactly the length of copper you want. I'm sure if any of you guys are bow hunters or anything like that, you'll have one of these. If not, you can pick them up for 60 to 100 bucks. Amazon or Cabela's or wherever. And then in terms of the actual copper that I run Blood Run Tackle 45-pound copper. I prefer to buy it in big spools. You can see this is a 1,000-foot spool, but you are able to purchase it if you don't want to do a rangefinder, you are able to purchase it in the direct lengths that you need. It's just more expensive if you purchase that way instead of buying in bulk. Next thing we're going to run through here, obviously you're going to want to have all your swivels, that sort of thing. Today we're running 65-pound backer. This is a 300 yard spool of Power Pro. We actually only want 150 yards. 150 yards is the minimum I'd recommend. Most of my big coppers I do 300s, but this is going to be an 80 to 100 copper. It's going to be a little up higher, so it's most likely not going to be seeing as much king action. So 150 yards is going to be plenty for me. And then I got two different types of mono here. This right here is, I use Berkeley Big Game for everything. This is a 40-pound spool. I'll show you what this is going to be for. This is going to be for the little piece of mono segment between the copper and braid backing. I put a little mono segment in there for the board to attach to. And then this is a big spool of 30-pound Big Game, and 30-pound is what I use for all my leaders. And one of the more unique things now about copper is that you have to do a kind of a special knot. We're going to be doing all swivel-based connections, and you do something called the haywire twist. There's some shrink tubing here. The shrink tubing goes over that knot, so being that notch is a little sharp and sometimes rough to run through the guides, shrink tubing definitely helps make it smoother and also not damage your leader and stuff with the sharp ends of the copper. Alrighty, so the first thing that we're going to want to do here now today is get our braid backing on here. Obviously I've already had this reel spooled up before with pure mono, but we're going to go ahead and run the braid through the guides, get the braid tied onto the backing here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut out exactly 150 yards on that spool. So I have exactly 150 yards of braid. Alright, we've hit that 150 yard mark, so we're going to go ahead and cut this spool of braid right here, get this tied onto the rod, and that will be all set there. Reel this in. Alright, now that we got the braid knotted onto the spool, we're just going to cut the tag in. And I always like to throw a little piece of tape over that spool, just especially with braid. It likes to have something to dig into so it doesn't slip on the spool. Just always something I put there to have peace of mind. But we'll throw a little piece of Gorilla Tape here. Now that we got that spool tape on there, I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure it's seated. And we're gonna reel this 150 yards of braid backer in. Nice thing about it being tied to the truck, as you can see, is you're able to keep this very nice and tight on the way in. So when it's spooled on very, very tight, you don't have to worry about any digging into itself. Okay, so next step, now that we got the braid backer spooled on, is we are going to go ahead and put that little segment of 40-pound mono in. And this is for our boards. Main reason that I don't go straight from the braid to the copper is that when you clip on a board, first of all, braid really destroys the clips on those offshore boards. If you run it a lot, it'll just grind a groove right into those rubber pads on the clips. Whereas if you have mono, it likes to grab it really well. It doesn't dig into the pads and it doesn't slip. And I like to run a little bit heavier mono there, just due to the fact that I don't want a weak point in my line above the copper. So yeah, 40-pound is great, and I'm going to do about a 5-foot segment of this, and this will be where the board attaches. So here now we got about 5 feet of mono. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is put another swivel on this end, and then from the other end of this swivel we're going to be going ahead for the copper. Rod is ready for copper. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and measure out how much copper we want, so we can go ahead and put this rod away for a second. As you can see, I am at almost the end of this spool. So hopefully, I'm hoping this is 100 feet right here. It should be. If it's a little bit shorter, I guess we're making a little bit shorter of a copper. But this is the end of my 1,000-foot spool. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and tie this end of the copper onto my little swivel that I got attached onto my truck here on the front tow hitch. All right, now that I got the copper onto the truck, we're going to go ahead and walk this out and see how much copper we got. We're going to aim for 100 feet. Alrighty, so we are at the end of the spool. I did just go ahead and range find this. It is a little bit shorter than 100 feet. We're actually sitting right at about 80 feet right here. So it looks like today we were making an 80 copper, which gets you right around, it's a 5-to-1 dive ratio. So you're looking at about like 16 feet down, which is not a horrible depth. This rod is mainly going to be targeting coho and steelhead up high in the water column. So now that we have the copper pulled out to where we want it, we're going to be going ahead and tying our copper to our swivel connection right here. And then this is right next to our mono segment that we tied on for our board. And we're going to be doing a knot today called the haywire twist. It's a very simple knot. Basically you just twist it a few times, then wrap it a few times, and you're set to go. But one thing that I always do is I put a little bit of heat shrinking over it, and it just helps it run through the guides a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead and cut this heat shrinking to length. You really only need about 1 inch or so. So we're just going to cut that there. That should be about a good length right there. Now, most important thing, you need to make sure you put this heat shrinking on the line before you tie your connection. Done that many times, have to cut a good knot. All right, let's go into the haywire twist here. So basically all it is you're going to run your copper through the guide, bend it over on itself, and take it, and while it's in a U like that, at a 90-degree over itself, we're just going to start twisting. Twist it on itself about 4 or 5 times. Now that it's twisted on itself, we're going to take this tag in here and wrap it on itself. All right, so that's what it looks like right there. It's a very slim down knot, not too much to it. Like I said, all it is you got twists and then wraps. Now we're gonna go ahead, give it a little pull, cut off this tag end, and then we're gonna slide up this piece of shrink tubing that we got on here. slide that up over the knot. And we can actually shorten the shrink tubing a little if we wanted. Alrighty, so we got a piece of shrink tubing over our knot. It's actually a very clean looking haywire twist. Now what we're going to do is, while we're holding the copper here, try to hold it far enough away. Go ahead and grab our lighter. It is a little bit windy today, so this might take a second. And we're just going to melt it on. Alrighty, so we took the swivel, took the copper off the truck, went ahead and did our same thing as on the other end, did the haywire twist. Always again, make sure you have your little piece of shrink tubing on before you start your knot. We did the haywire twist where you got 4 or 5 twists, 4 or 5 wraps. Pretty basic. We're gonna go ahead and shrink tube this on now, and then it is time for the leader. Alrighty, time for the leader here. Once again, for the leader, I use 30-pound big game. It's about the mono that I use for everything. I use it for my downrigger rods. I use it for all the leaders on all my coppers. I use it for my braid leaders. The spool will last me years. So we're just going to go ahead and tie this leader onto our copper connection here next to this haywire twist. There we go. Cut off that tag end. Now what I'm going to do is, I like to have a 30-foot leader on all my copper rods. So I'm going to go ahead, stick this swivel onto this connection on my truck. We're going to walk this spool out 30 feet and cut it. Alright, that there is about 30 feet. Go ahead and cut this. Alright, so now that swivel, that connection's cut. Disconnect this from the truck. Make sure that's all straight, and we're going to reel the leader in and then tie on our final snap swivel. Alrighty, so for the snap swivel, guys, there is a little thing that I'd like to show you here. So this is what I used to run on almost all my rigs. This is a VMC 50-pound snap swivel right here. I actually had issues with Kings straightening these out. This wire here, even though it's rated to 50 pounds, is very thin, and with shock force, when a big king hits, it'll just completely straighten that out. So since then, I have upgraded almost all of my connections to this right here. This is a 85 or 90 or 100 pound VMC snap swivel. Anyway, what you're looking for is, you want ones here that are permanently connected, where it's wrapped around. Whereas this type, you can completely take off this snap and it's just a simple loop right there. That's the connection that they were straightening. So yeah, Big King is not going to straighten this. It doesn't, even though it's a little bit larger, it doesn't affect your spoons or anything like that in terms of the way they flutter. It's very light. But yeah, this is what I recommend. Alrighty guys, that's going to be a wrap for today's videos for the most part. Do a quick overview again of how you set up your copper rod. So starting at the back, we got our 150 yards of braid backer. If this is like a 300 copper, 200 copper, something that's going to get hit a lot more from Big Kings, and I got a bigger spool, I'm going to go ahead and throw a full 300 yards, 900 feet of backer on there. Then from there, we went on a swivel connection from the braid backer to a 5-yard, 40-pound mono section for our planer board. Swivel connection then from that 5-foot section to our copper with a swivel and then a haywire twist knot from the copper. Got our 80 feet of copper, and then a swivel connection from the copper to our 30-foot mono leader. This is 30-pound big game mono, and then just snap swivel at the end. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys haven't been out on Lake Michigan much, or you're just looking for a way to set up a copper rod, don't want to pay for someone to do it for you, this is how you do it. Takes a few minutes, a few little specific knots and stuff, but certified to catch you more fish. Those board rods, some days they're the only ones that fire. So this is me casting in Wisconsin, guys. Peace out. See you in the next video.